Alright guys, so after months and months of looking for an off-road toy, something to take out and play with, here's what I ended up settling on. This is the Textron Off-Road, also known as the Arctic Cat Wildcat XX. Gotta say thanks to MLS Power Sports over here near Georgetown, because they cut me a really nice deal on this machine. And in the future, you're gonna see a whole lot more of this thing also. Yeah, it's actually pretty cold out here, so I'm gonna try and make this short and sweet. So here's the thing about the Wildcat. Before I've even had a chance to ride this thing, you know, just from the standpoint of a person who's shopping for a new side-by-side, let's talk about a few of the pros and cons. I'm gonna start with the cons, because there's not very many of them. So on this Wildcat XX, first thing I'll tell you is these things are really heavy. This machine is listed at over 1,800 pounds. It's a really heavy machine. But I guess that's sort of a con, but it's sort of not, because the reason it's so heavy is because of the cage, the suspension, you know, the fact that they overbuilt this machine. I mean, that particular cage, I read that if you simply go through there at the joints and weld those together, this cage will be considered, you know, legal for score racing. So I mean, this thing is just really heavy duty, and that's the reason why it's so heavy. So even though the weight's kind of a con, it's kind of not. So that's one thing, is the weight. I also kind of think it's interesting that they don't have anything on the rear to hook to. I mean, like if you were to get stuck, I mean, there's nothing back here on this machine that you could use as a recovery point. Now they do have some threaded holes there, so you can buy something. You know, I think I've seen receiver hitches and recovery points and so forth and so on the internet or whatever, but there's nothing on there from the factory, which on an off-road vehicle is kind of perplexing to me. I don't understand that. And then if you go around to the front, you don't have a bumper. I mean, there's nothing really up here to give you any adequate protection if you ride in the trails. Now, if you're out in the dunes or that kind of thing, it doesn't really matter. But here in the eastern US, where we ride, you know, wooded trails all the time, it's really nice to have a bumper or something on there, so if you get up against a sapling or a small tree or something, you're not gonna crack your grill or whatever. So, you know, again, this is something you can rectify through the aftermarket, but it's just kind of odd that at this price point, they don't have anything up there. Now the early 2018 models, like the very first batch of them, had some issues with the axles, because these axles, because you've got a trailing arm, it's kind of a completely different design back here. The axle has to actually plunge in and out. You know, it has to have a variable length to accommodate the suspension travel, and so they kind of come up with a cool design here. But the beginning of the run, they had some issues where they were not installed properly at the factory, or they had some minor little issues with the clips that hold the axle in, and they've also had some issues with the boots ripping. But from what I understood, they went through a couple of different redesigns on these axles, and so it shouldn't be a problem anymore. So that's pretty much all the cons that I can think of just right off the bat. Now let's talk about some of the pros and the reason why I went with this machine. I started looking at the Polaris first, and you know, my dad got an XP1000 with a ride command system, which is really cool, by the way. I love that ride command system. But I just couldn't get comfortable inside the Polaris. I'm 6'3", and it just feels all wrong to me. I'm hitting my knees on everything when I get in there, and there's just no space. So I was like, well, I'm gonna kind of look and see what else is out there. I checked out the Honda Talon, same deal. Very uncomfortable, no space in there. Seating position is all weird. It just didn't feel right. Checked out that Kawasaki, remember? And the Kawasaki KRX1000 is awesome. Probably my favorite machine out there, but it's also $20,000. So cross that off the list. The Yamaha was okay, but it still wasn't awesome. And then I checked out the Can-Am, and I had almost settled on getting one of those Can-Am Mavericks. But then I looked at this machine and I thought, you know, I'm gonna do some more research on these, because I didn't really know a lot about them. So when I started to research this machine, I discovered that it's actually kind of awesome what they've done here. Of course, you see the decal back here, it says RG Pro. That's for Robbie Gordon, who you may know is an off-road racer with a lot of experience. He's had a lot of success in off-road racing. So he's kind of from that realm and that world, and he had a big hand on designing this thing and kind of showing them, you know, how to properly set up a suspension and so forth and so on. So very first thing you'll notice is, like, check that out. You got double shear joints on the upper and lower control arm, double shear on your tie rods. The knuckle is a forged piece. I mean, you don't see any flimsy ball joints or anything going on in the front of this. This thing is built to take an absolute beating. It's got the Fox QS3 shocks. I was told that during development they had planned on doing the King shocks, but at the last minute, I guess the bean counters said, hey, we can't afford that. You know, let's do something different here. But from what I've read, these things are still, they perform really well and they do a great job. This thing's supposed to have the plushest ride that you can get, you know, for an off-road machine in this class. You know, you come around back and you see there's no radius arms or anything back here to get bent and torn up. And these trailing arms here are reversible, so you can just buy one to carry as a spare if you had to, because you can flip this and use it on the other side. You know, also the wheels and tires are the same front and back, so this tire and wheel can be used on any position, and there's room in that bed back there for up to a 32-inch spare. The other thing is, this is a 15-inch wheel. This machine comes from the factory with 15-inch wheels and 30-inch tires. The reason I like the 15s is because it opens up a lot of possibilities. I mean, you could even use Jeep tires. You know, those won't fit, but you could use a 31 1050 15 for a Jeep. You could even go like a 32 1150 if you wanted to. So it just opens a lot of possibilities. These tires, of course, are taller than what you're going to get on a lot of machines from the factory. So that's really cool also, and a really big selling point. Check that out. Instead of having a little built-in motorcycle style stator to provide electricity, you've got an actual alternator up in there. I mean, it's just one of those things that they thought of, you know, that the other companies seem to not really do. And if you look up in here, you'll see all kinds of heat shielding. They really did a good job of trying to keep the heat off the parts that don't need heat on them. The engine is a 3-cylinder Yamaha engine. Now this thing is rated 125 horsepower, but when these 18s came out, a lot of people were putting these things on a dyno, and they were finding that they actually made closer to 130 horsepower. So for 2019, the official rating went to 130. From what I've read, there's not really a lot of difference in the engines, other than maybe the rods and some very minor things that they did to kind of make these capable of being boosted, you know, if you really want to get crazy with it. But I figure 130 horsepower for the kind of riding that we do will be just fine. On the inside of this machine, you have the most leg room, the most space that you're going to find on any machine in this price range. I've sat in all of them, and this thing feels the best out of all of them. You know, when I get up in here, I don't hit my knees on it or anything. Again, I'm about 6'3", and look how much leg and knee room I have. I mean, I've got several inches on both sides, and I could not say that for a lot of the other machines that I looked at. Also, back here behind the dash, you've got some wiring pigtails back there. So this thing's already pre-wired for accessories. If you wanted to put a radio or lights or whatever on this machine, you've got a panel here you can take off, and it's already pre-wired back there, which again I thought was really cool. This one has the actual diff lock, whereas the Can-Am I was looking at did not. I guess they use the Visco lock or whatever they call it, kind of like the system that Polaris has, where it's just automatic on demand. Well, this machine actually has a true diff lock, which is going to be great for riding around out in the woods. And of course, you've got that full LCD display. Got a really nice grab handle here for the passenger. I mean, it's just, they thought of just about everything on this machine. So the crazy thing about it is, I mean, these list for a little over $20,000, but I was able to buy this machine for about $6,000 off the sticker price. And I guess it's just because for some reason people don't really know a lot about these. You know, everybody runs the Can-Ams and the Polaris, and you know, people don't really give a lot of attention to these. But like I said, when I started to do the research, I found out that these things are just overbuilt. They've got a lot of features that you don't get anywhere else. And most people have said that they're actually pretty reliable. You know, aside from a few early issues, I haven't really read anything seriously bad about these. So I'm kind of looking forward to taking it out in the woods. You know, we like to go to a lot of different off-road parks around the area. And it'll give me a chance to do a different kind of off-roading where I don't have to be as careful because I don't have to worry about ruining my daily driver. So that'll be kind of cool also. So yeah, at the end of the day, I'm kind of excited about this Wildcat XX. I'm kind of excited to get it out and try it. You know, the weather's really cold right now, but you know, pretty soon it's going to straighten up. It won't be another month or two until we start to get some decent weather and some nice weekends. So, you know, we're going to definitely keep doing some stuff with the Jeep Gladiator because I love that thing, and there's some more cool videos I have planned for it. But this is the new addition to the family, and I'm going to have some fun with that next year as well, this upcoming year. And so I just appreciate you guys watching, and if you got any experiences with this machine that you'd like to share or anything you'd like to know about it, post below, let me know. I'll try to get back with you. But yeah, I'm excited about it, and I hope you guys are too. It's going to be fun to see what this XX can do out in the woods. And like I said, you don't see a ton of these out there, so it'll be kind of neat, you know. And hey, I guess we'll talk to you guys later. Got to get this thing unloaded and get it in the barn. It's freezing out here. So take care, guys, and we'll see you next time.